away that Sunday and remarked to his wife that it was rare to see him smile. Mrs. Gilda Chatham told the jury she and her husband sat behind Seth during his final sermon, spoke to him briefly when the service was over, and picked up no clue whatsoever that he was on the verge of such a startling act. Mrs. Nettie Vinson testified that she said hello to Seth as they were leaving the church, and that he seemed uncharacteristically friendly. After a short recess, Seth's oncologist, a Dr. Talbot from the Regional Medical Center in Tupelo, was sworn in and quickly managed to bore the courtroom with a long and dry narrative about his patient's lung cancer. He had treated Seth for almost a year, and referring to his notes, went on and on about the surgery, then the chemotherapy and radiation and medications. There had been little hope initially, but Seth had fought hard. When the cancer metastasized to his spine and ribs, they knew the end was near. Dr. Talbot had seen Seth 2 weeks before he died, and was surprised at how determined he was to keep going. But the pain was intense. He increased the oral dosage of Demerol to 100 milligrams every 3 to 4 hours. Seth preferred not to take the Demerol because the drug often made him drowsy. In fact, he said more than once that he tried to survive each day without pain meds. Dr. Talbot did not know how many tablets Seth actually took. In the past 2 months, he had prescribed 200. Jake's purpose in putting the doctor on the stand was twofold. First, he wanted to establish the fact that Seth was almost dead from lung cancer. Therefore, hopefully, the act of suicide might not seem so drastic and unreasonable. Jake planned to argue later that Seth was indeed thinking clearly in his last days, regardless of how he chose to die. The pain was unbearable. The end was near. He simply sped things along. Second, Jake wanted to confront head-on the issue of the side effects of Demerol. Lanier had some heavyweight testimony lined up, an expert who would say the powerful narcotic taken in the quantities prescribed seriously impaired Seth's judgment. An odd fact of the case was that the last prescription was never found. Seth had purchased it at a pharmacy in Tupelo 6 days before he died. Then he apparently disposed of it. Thus, there was no proof of how much or how little he'd actually consumed. At his specific instructions, he was buried without an autopsy. Months earlier, Wade Lanier had suggested, off the record, that the body be exhumed for toxicity tests. Judge Atlee said no, again, off the record. The level of opiates in Seth's blood on Sunday when he died was not automatically relevant to the level the day before when he wrote his will. Judge Atlee seems to be particularly offended by the notion of digging up a person after he had been properly laid to rest. Jake was pleased with his direct examination of Dr. Talbot. They clearly established that Seth tried to avoid taking Demerol, and that there was simply no way to prove how much was in his system when he made his last will. Wade Lanier managed to get the doctor to admit that a patient taking up to 6 to 8 doses a day of Demerol at 100 milligrams each should not consider making important decisions, especially ones dealing with large sums of money. Such a patient should be somewhere resting comfortably and quietly. No driving, no physical activity, no crucial decision-making. After the doctor was excused, Jake called Arlene Trotter, Seth's longtime secretary and office manager. She would be his last witness before Letty, and since they were approaching 5 p.m., Jake made the decision to save Letty for early Wednesday morning. He had spoken to Arlene many times since Seth's death, and was nervous about putting her on the stand. He really had no choice. If he didn't call her, Wade Lanier certainly would. She had been deposed in early February and had been evasive in Jake's opinion. After 4 hours, he strongly believed she had been coached by Lanier or someone working for him. Nonetheless, she spent more time with Seth the last week of his life than anyone else, and her testimony was crucial. She appeared terrified as she swore to tell the truth and settled into the seat. She glanced at the jurors, who were watching closely. Jake asked the preliminary questions, the ones with easy and obvious answers, and she seemed to settle down. He established that from Monday through Friday of the week before he died, Seth arrived at his office each morning around 9, which was later than usual. He was generally upbeat and in good spirits until noon, when he took a long nap on the sofa in his office. He wasn't eating, though Arlene kept offering snacks and sandwiches. He kept smoking. He was never able to stop. As always, he kept his door closed, so Arlene wasn't exactly sure what he was doing. However, he stayed busy that week trying to sell 3 tracts of timberland in South Carolina. He was on the phone a lot, which was not unusual. At least once an hour, he left the building and went for a stroll around the premises. He stopped and talked to some of his employees. He flirted with Pamela, the girl at the front desk. Arlene knew he was in great pain because at times he couldn't hide it, though he never ever admitted this. He let it slip once that he was taking down, though she never saw the following footprints. No, he was not blaspheming. He did not slur his speech. At times he was fatigued, and he napped often. Usually he left around 3 or 4. Jake was able to paint the picture of a man still in charge, the boss at work, as if all was well. For 5 consecutive days before he wrote a new will, Seth Hubbard was at the office, on the phone, tending to his business. Wade Lanier began his cross-examination with, "Let's talk about this timberland in South Carolina, Miss Trotter. Did Seth Hubbard sell these 3 tracts of land?" "Yes, sir, he did." "And when?" "On that Friday morning." "The Friday morning before he wrote his will on Saturday, correct?" "Correct." "Did he sign any sort of contract?" "He did. It was faxed to my desk, and I took it to him. He signed it, and I faxed it back to the attorneys in Spartanburg." Lanier picked up a document and said, "Your Honor, I have here Exhibit C5, which has already been stipulated to and admitted." Judge Atlee said, "Proceed." Lanier handed the document to Arlene and said, "Could you please identify that?" "Yes, sir. It's a contract Seth signed on Friday morning, selling the 3 tracts of land in South Carolina." "And how much was Seth to receive?" "A total of $810,000. 18. Now, Ms. Trotter, how much did Seth pay for this timberland?" She paused for a moment, glanced nervously at the jurors, and said, "You have the paperwork, Mr. Lanier." "Of course." Lanier produced 3 more exhibits, all of which had been marked and admitted beforehand. There were no surprises. Jake and Lanier had haggled over the exhibits and documents for weeks. Judge Atlee had long since ruled them admissible. Arlene slowly reviewed the exhibits as the courtroom waited. Finally, she said, "Mr. Hubbard purchased this land in 1985 and paid a total of $1.1 million. Lanier scribbled this down as if it were new. Peering over his reading glasses with his eyebrows arched in disbelief, he said, "A loss of $300,000. Apparently so. And this was only 24 hours before he made his handwritten will." Jake was on his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation on the part of the witness. Counsel can save it for his closing argument." Sustained. Lanier ignored the commotion and zeroed in on the witness. "Any idea, Ms. Trotter, why Seth would do such a bad deal.